Yesterday, a member of the military that you and I have never heard of undertook an extremely courageous and historic act, speaking up against Donald Trump while in full uniform on the steps of the Capitol. He was arrested, and I want to tell you about what happened to him. But first, I want you to hear some of his speech in his own words. This is Air Force Major Jason Watson speaking in front of the United States Congress yesterday, just after lunchtime.
The president and vice president must be impeached, convicted, and removed.
Yes!
What a tremendous act of courage and also sacrifice. If you're not from the United States or you're not from a military family, my dad served in the Air Force for 30 years. You may not know that you cannot make political statements or speak for or against the president, technically, while in uniform. And Major Watson is an active duty member of the United States Air Force. He was in full uniform. He could potentially face dishonorable discharge for what he's done. But he took an oath to defend this country against enemies, foreign and domestic. And Donald Trump is openly engaged in the dismantling of American democracy. He's committing multiple impeachable offenses on a regular basis. The corruption, the graft is so unbelievably blatant. Not only the way that he is disregarding the rule of law, but the way that he is systematically dismantling it. I understand why Major Watson took this step yesterday. I don't really know. I'm not an attorney. I don't know what's going to happen next for him, but I know that he was willingly undertaking an action that he knew could have really serious consequences for him. And obviously the regime doesn't want you to see this. WikiLeaks' Pete Hegseth doesn't want you to see this. He's been firing competent, capable members of the military, especially ones who are not white men, for quite a while. And I think it really is important to see. Here we have not any of the many women that Hegseth has fired from the military, but we have a white man standing up and saying, hey, this is not political. He even said earlier in his speech that he's not political. This is not about politics. This is about defending his oath. And he is acting with what he feels is integrity, upholding the oath that he made to the Constitution and the American people. This is the first incident I have seen of anybody in uniform doing something like this. We've seen all kinds of members of the military violating their oath the other direction, supporting Donald Trump, making political statements for the right, for the Trump regime. This is the first time I've seen anybody speak out in this way who's an active duty member of the military in full uniform. We've seen veterans also who are no longer in service wear their uniforms and make statements. But Major Watson, again, potentially facing really serious consequences. And Pete Hegseth doesn't want to see that. He doesn't want you to see that. Donald Trump does not want you to see that, because they want you to believe that all members of the military, especially the ones who are left, especially the active duty white men in the military, are all loyal to the regime. They want you to think that the military is all in the pocket of the regime. They will do Donald Trump's bidding. And we know that that's not true. We know that there are lots and lots of folks in the U.S. military who are not down with what is happening. They're incredibly displeased. They're incredibly uncomfortable. They don't want this to be happening. A majority of Americans don't want this reality. A minority of Americans voted for Donald Trump in the first place. And now we've had ample time to see the way that he's destroying this country, and more people are reaching their breaking point. More and more people are feeling compelled by their consciences to do something. I can't say one way or the other whether this was a politically savvy move. I do think it's important for people to take calculated risks, and I think everybody's risk threshold is different, and you have to assess that for yourself. So I'm not advocating in any way for every member of the armed services to do what Major Watson did, but I also want to acknowledge that he made a choice hoping that it would have an impact. He made a choice because he felt that it was the right thing to do. If you want to make that choice and that sacrifice be worth something, then you need to elevate his story. Because if there's not mass public support for actions like these, if other members of the military and also veterans and also regular civilians don't hear about this story, then his sacrifice will not be worth it, right? We know that in resistance work that so much of it is a PR campaign. You need to have publicity. It's not just that you take a brave stand, it's then everybody has to hear about it, because our goal here is to what? To build a massive big tent movement of the American people against fascism. So if you want to bring people in, if you want to convince people to join your cause, they need to hear about what's happening. They need to hear about the sacrifices that you're making. So that's the reason that I'm telling this story, not because I necessarily think that this was something that, like, if I had a member of my family who was active duty military, that I would want them to do. It's not because I necessarily agree with his tactics, but we're all standing in solidarity with each other. And it's not for me to decide what is and isn't an effective tactic from somebody in the resistance with me. What it is my job to do is to make sure that I don't let their sacrifice be in vain. Now, I don't know if you saw in that clip there, Jolly Good Ginger was at this rally where this happened, but also Congressman Al Green. I'm not going to be referencing the Hill's coverage of this story that came out earlier today. It's by Ashley Fields. Now, I don't know if y'all remember, Rep. Al Green also undertook significant personal risk, and he's paying the price for standing up for democracy and against the regime. During Donald Trump's first State of the Union in 2025, he stood up and he spoke out. And no Democrats had his back. He walked out. He was escorted out. And I at the time thought, oh, every Democrat will stand up and leave in solidarity with him. And they didn't. And then he sat before Congress and they voted to censure him. Multiple Democrats, including Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, just north of me in Ridgefield, Washington, voted to censure Al Green for standing up and speaking out. Nobody censured Marjorie Taylor Greene for screaming at Joe Biden during States of the Union, just so you know. Green is one of the members of Congress who has regularly tried to introduce articles of impeachment against Donald Trump, has been outspoken about impeachment. I mean, Donald Trump has committed something like 36 impeachable offenses that we know of so far. So Rep. Green said of Major Watson, he stood for impeachment of the president on the Capitol grounds, and thereafter he walked up the steps where he was arrested and he was taken away. This is the kind of courage necessary to inspire others to understand that liberty and justice for all that we pledge allegiance to is something that we can make real. It's more than an ideal. It is something that can be real for every person in this country, but only if we have the courage to take the stand that Major Watson took. The article concludes by saying that the Air Force Major could be court-martialed or face disciplinary measure under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's true. It's not without sacrifice. We have to risk it for a biscuit. People are sacrificing in tremendous ways all around the country. Alex Preddy and Renee Good sacrificed with their lives. There is no way to get out of fascism without all of us having to pay a price. And the reality is that if we submit to fascism, that the price will be much heavier. Far more of us will die. We will all live in a country with unfreedom, in a country where control and coercion and suffering are the norm. So we either have to risk it now, we either have to stand up and defend our rights and insist upon our rights, because you only have rights if you exercise them, right? We insist upon our rights now, we follow our consciences now, or so much more will be taken away from us in the time to come. I really encourage you to go search up and listen to Major Watson's entire speech, and then to share it with friends and family. Share it with your neighbors, share it with folks that you know, because people need to know that regular, ordinary folks are making sacrifices on a daily basis. Americans all over the country are saying, my conscience compels me. This is not right. What is happening in this country is not right, and I cannot be silent about it anymore. It's our collective power, our collective voice, our collective action that will get us out of this. But the individual events and risks and actions that people undertake, we need to stand in solidarity with those folks, because they take those actions on behalf of all of us, on behalf of democracy.